Good morning, Vanessa Scurry.
Good morning. Dr. Rainier Miller.
Good morning. Happy Friday. My name is Chris Willett.
And our panel is about the power of social and emotional learning, basically nurturing a holistic development. And over there, I did find a little graphic. I didn't know what kind of technology would have, but basically holistic education is so many components put together. And it's not just academics. It comes from, their emotional needs, respect, fulfilling the student and no matter their age, no matter their ability, no matter their learning style, but giving them all the components to be a well-rounded individual. And so that's kind of the platform of the social and emotional, because sometimes we get so focused on the academic pieces and we forget about those and the data-driven and things like that. And then if you'll scroll through, keep going. One more. One more. Oh, wrong way. Keep going. Okay. So I did find some stats that I thought were kind of interesting, and this is from the CDC in 2020, 2021, and this is about high school seniors, high school students in general. 42% are diagnosed with some kind of depression. 35% are diagnosed with some kind of poor mental health, and 85% were diagnosed with some kind of actual stress disorder. And that's high school students in the United States. And if you back up to the other one, keep going. Oh, that's upside down. There we go. So I know this one's hard to read, but on the left-hand side of this stat, at the where the yellow bars are, the very last one, that is the level. It's in April of 2023, 28% of students' population in the United States were diagnosed with some kind of anxiety disorder, and all the anxiety disorders are listed kind of there. But we're the outlier. The next country underneath of us is Portugal at 8%. So what are we doing? What are we doing that's so different that makes us such an outlier and created an anxious, student? What is different? And I think that's kind of where this goes. We're obviously doing something as a country to not give them social and emotional learning. So it's kind of where jumping off point. What are we doing?
So when we're looking at cultural norms, when we're looking at what's going on right now in terms of what are they being exposed to, kids are, as we all know, they absorb what's around them, whether it's through genetics, environment, a combination of both, which is a debate that's been going for centuries, nature versus nurture. We really have to take a look at priorities and culture as it shifts and the exposure. When we're looking at things such as maybe they're getting most of their information from their peers on social media, what are the priorities that are being in front of them in terms of what are they focusing on, what are they feeding on, and what is the effect that's having on them mentally, which of course affects their development, their growth, and how they turn out as adults.
So one of the most powerful tools when I'm working with educators in whatever building I'm at is to have them follow a day in the life of their student, right? And to shadow a student. So the most recent occurrence of this at Emma Willard, we had a student who wakes up at 7 o'clock, goes to breakfast for 7:30, has choir at 8, has class at 9, has class again at 11-ish before lunch, then lunch hits, then another class in the day, then hopefully a session with a learning specialist, and then you go right to sports, and then you go back to dinner, and then you go right to study hall for 2 hours right before bed, and just leave a little bit of time at the end of the night for you to do everything you need to do, and go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. It is really powerful to have your teachers, your educators follow their students for a day in the school so that they can get a sense of not just our own islands that we get on, but the whole picture, that holistic picture of our students, because we ask them to do so much more than just learn.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, so many kids, when I was in the public sector, they would come and we would say that they're when they're falling asleep or they're acting out, a lot of times they're labeled as a bad kid, or they get some kind of diagnosis, or they get an IEP or a 504. But if my schedule in the public sector wasn't so fully loaded, take the time to ask, did you eat breakfast? What happened last night? What time did you go to bed? There's something else going on in their emotional psyche that they're not here. And if you don't have a student here, you're never going to get them to get academics. That whole day is lost. So there have been many times when they come in, we've had students that have 5 young siblings, and they're their caretaker during the night. And that 1-year-old got up and cried all night, and he was the caretaker. So when he came to school, because it's a safe haven for him, I let him sleep. I gave him that 45 minutes so that the rest of the day he could be productive. And I think that's what it is. We need to, and that leads us into another panel, but we also need to be afforded the opportunity to take the time to have those conversations, to learn about the emotional well-being of that student, and build those relationships, because all too often that's the key to some of the social and emotional, is just being afforded that time to do that and not being removed from the classroom to go do other things.
Well, I'm going to say that I've had the privilege of working with 3s and 4s, and my goal was to lay the foundation. Statistically, our students don't want to be in school by the 2nd grade. They have ineffective teachers, which compounds that effect. And so when I graduated, I was like, I want to teach early childhood because I want all of our kids to love school. And it just goes right to what you're saying, Heather. I had a young student. He would come in. He wouldn't talk to anybody. He would sit in his cubby. And after about the first time of me saying, are you coming to the circle? And he would just look at me like, no, I'm not coming to your circle. And I just learned to leave him alone, because I don't like to get up at 7 either. So I left him alone. And when you leave them alone in that space, he got up, he put his book bag away, he put his jacket away, he came to the circle, and he was way more involved than he would have been had I been like, you're coming to the circle, we're all going to the circle, get to the circle now. And I think that we talked about how I'm going to lead into another thing, but I just found out that's another topic that'll be on a panel, so make sure you go to that one, of teachers having SEL for themselves. I think we focus on our children a lot. We need SEL for students, SEL for students. We really, really do. But if I am not a whole person trying to teach a student who is not a whole person, none of us are going to achieve the goals that we have planned. Right. So definitely, for a holistic approach, I think we need to meet our kids where they are. And it's hard because curriculum says do this. It's hard because testing. It's hard because all of the mandates from people who don't teach, we have to follow. But sometimes you have to be a rebel with a cause, and you have to take the time to do what's best for that particular child. All of them may not need it, but if you have one who does, then you have to figure out how to meet their needs within the framework of everything that you have to do.
Absolutely, and also acknowledging that kids don't all learn the same. Mm-hmm. Some kids, they have anxiety, social anxiety. They have these impressions of what other people are going to treat them like when they're in the classroom, and so keeping that in mind as well. That's why there's a sudden growth where now I'm seeing, there's a lot more Montessori schools, there's a lot more customized, My daughter's in a high school where they allow kids to be in class by themselves. Didn't know that was a thing till recently. But people are starting to realize that, wait, we cannot have a cookie cutter approach to learning environments. And then also keeping in mind in terms of the home life, kind of piggybacking on what my colleagues are saying. If there's things going on in the home life where the teacher is not aware, but maybe there's one parent in the home and they're always having to work, not really understanding the effects of the home life on the child is always going to put you in a situation where you cannot help that child to learn.
And I think as we build those relationships with our students, it's really important for us to, as educators, to not assume that we now have a relationship with that student. Students don't share a large portion of the things in their lives for many different reasons. Oftentimes when it comes to learning, it's because of shame. They felt less than, whether one time in a classroom because the teacher made a comment after they got the wrong answer, or a peer said, hey, why does that take you so long to do that? So we need to be careful as we build those relationships to also hold that space for the moment when the student wants to walk away and not listen to us, because as humans, as soon as we know someone wants us to do something, we immediately push back. It's a subconscious response, but we immediately push back on that and an effect to not do it. So that is a wonderful example of that. Those relationship building is the core, though. You don't know what you don't know, so you have to keep trying. And as an educator, that is a lesson in humility, because you have to keep going back and listening. And we can make mistakes, and they're so powerful in these students' lives. It's a fine line to walk.
It is. I want to just talk about that relationship piece. When you said that you don't know that you formed it, because it's very true. We've had students who struggle with behavior, and they say, oh, go to Ms. Miller's class. And so you get them because you're supposed to be the person who's the mean teacher who's going to put them back in place and make them behave. But sometimes when they come and you are that teacher, and maybe you don't reprimand them, maybe you don't do certain things, but instead I'm going to give you some work to do, or it's time to leave, let's clean up this, let's help the younger students, give them a little responsibility. But then later on you think that you've established a relationship with this child, and when they don't listen to you, you're like, oh, I thought he liked me. But it's not always true. You have to try to establish those relationships, but sometimes if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're just not going to click with that child, but as long as you still maintain a respect for that child as an individual and they still respect you, I think it can work out. But students do what they want for the teachers that they want. They pick you. They know which teacher is authentic, which one is there for their support and wants the best for them. And so they usually do a lot more for teachers that they feel that way about than for teachers who are just like, oh, she's my friend, she always has to come to my room. That's not really the authentic relationships that they thrive on. So,
Well, and part of all of that in building the relationships is also what we have found. I established a school 12 years ago. It's a project-based learning, and basically every student comes with a toolbox, and they need their own toolbox. No matter their diagnosis, we all learn differently. We all need an IEP, to be honest. I needed to have been shown how I learned so that I could have been successful. And we allow our students to do just that. And we work with the medical community, we work with the technology community, as well as ourselves to build this environment. Sometimes the students will come to us with a diagnosis or whatever, and they have therapists and things we can work with, but sometimes they don't. And I don't ever want that to be a crutch either. I don't want them, oh, well, I've been diagnosed with ODD or ADHD. Okay, so how are you still going to take that and be successful in the real world? Let's do that. But also, that doesn't mean that you sit here and learn a formula. Let's go outside and figure out how you can build that ramp. Where are you going to take these skills in the real world, and how are you going to tackle that? Because it's all about building that relationship and empowering them. I think the biggest thing for us too is we empower our students, and that drives your relationships. It drives the social, it drives the emotional, and it can be done in the public sector. It's just that when I was in the public sector, they frowned upon it. Okay, well, no, you got to put the chart on the wall, or you got to meet this data requirement. But society has changed, and academics and this field has to change with it. And that's kind of what all this is. We've got to change. Obviously, it's not working. Look at the numbers. We're so outlied. We're such the outlier. We've got to do something, and we've got to do it now, or, heaven forbid, or when they get ready to take care of us. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's a valiant effort to want to individualize learning for every student, and I think sometimes we run into the barriers, right? We don't always have a water view school coming out and being created.
We just need more of them, that's why.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, so how do you balance that out, right? Because then teachers can feel like they are losing their power to actually reach the student. So how do you balance that out with each student? We know from neuroscience right now that you're right, every brain is uniquely wired, and it's from our previous experiences and our life experiences. And so how do we maximize that with our students? And again, meeting them where they are at is one thing, but like really empowering them to have that agency, that choice, right, in their learning. Like, what do you want to learn? There are some core things you need to learn, and I think as educators, we have to help establish those. And then here are the skill sets that are going to help you as you go to the next level, as you go into the world and the workforce. So it's really important that we get there.
Well, and I think for me, the biggest thing as from the academic side to lead into the social and emotional is mostly high school. I mean, I focus mostly on high school, but was the question of why do I need to know this? Where am I going to use this in the real world? If we as educators or as medical, no matter your career field, if you can at least explain to them when you teach them something, where and why they need to know it. I mean, algebra, no, we don't use letters in real world, but every time you look at your watch and you figure, oh, I got 6 more hours to dinner, that was algebra if you wrote it down. We're just not taking the time to write it down. So explaining to them when we finish a lesson, before the students get up from that table, they are told where and why, whatever we just did, history, math, English, forensic science, whatever, where they're going to see it in the real world so they can at least appreciate it, even if that's not their career field. And I think part of that is what we do to empower them and give them that social and emotional piece, because they're able to understand, why am I here? Why am I sitting in this seat? Or why am I doing this assignment right now? Because I don't need this in the real world.
I really love that point because, our universities are facing a crisis. Because more and more of our up-and-coming students are like, I don't need this. I can sit at home, come up with my own ideas, and I don't really need school to make them happen. And so we really need to kind of look at where does education fit in with the current generations? Where are we going? There's so many different things now that people are suggesting should be implemented into a typical educational program. They're like, okay, we're graduating, but we don't know how to do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. How about basic living skills in terms of doing my taxes, understanding that. So not just looking at the educational system and where it started and what were the purposes back then, but also maybe we need an update.
I think we need an update. I think COVID showed us we need an update. There were so many gaps everywhere. Teachers didn't even know how to go virtual, so it was a really showing experience. But I think that maybe the problem or challenge is that we stopped collaborating, right? We stopped collaborating. So where are nonprofits? Where are churches? Where are community organizations? I was teaching, then I'm in central office, and I established a nonprofit because I realized that the students on this side of this county weren't getting the same benefits of students who are closer to the universities. All right, so Maryland University, they have tutors that go out, they have STEM teachers that will go out, but on this side of the county, they don't come because the students can't get transportation. So I'm thinking, like, how do we bridge those gaps? How do we create opportunities for students who don't have that same access? If it's transportation, if it's money, if it's digital access, whatever it may be, how can we bridge that gap? Educators can't do it alone, especially as you've said, like, we're in public school, so our hands are kind of tied. It's state testing, it's local testing, it's district testing, it's this. Don't teach the test, but I'm testing all day. So it's a lot, But maybe we need to collaborate better with our other organizations. So if our students need STEM and the University of Maryland offers free STEM, then why can't the school bus go pick the students up and bring them to the other side? If there are nonprofits who do IT training, then why can't someone who's doing that reach out? Because I can't do it all, right? If I'm in a classroom, I have my own things that I have to accomplish, or I get penalized, and then the principal gets penalized, and it's a big mess. But if we have more collaborations where the leadership is allowed to reach out and pull people in, and I've seen it happen, so it's not like it can't happen. We visited schools in Boston. There was a teacher-led school, was another school, but they had distributive leadership, and they had all kinds of institutions that came in. Their kids got to go to farms and see how farms work. I mean, all kinds of things that you don't think are relevant because you're sitting here trying to teach algebra. But if they could take that knowledge and go on a trip somewhere where they see it in action, you know. So I think maybe part of it is bridging those collaborations. I feel like we may have had more collaborations when we were all in school than what we see now.
I think, and I agree with that. We coin it as we need a more sense of a community everywhere. I mean, growing up, even in where I live, was a community, but everybody looked out for one another. And when I was in school, everybody knew, even though I graduated with 800 kids in my graduating class, you kind of looked out for each other, and we don't have that anymore. We're too divided. It's like I don't have enough time, and that's the other thing. Like, because we're not a community, those people that are trying to be the movers and shakers for these kids to make these changes, we're only one. And so it's going to take all of us together, like what we're doing, to come together and make these shifts, you know. And to spin off on one other thing is like the sense of community. One of the things that I'm learning from the students, yes, COVID just amplified it. It's already there. Society is too quick to say, these kids coming up are lazy. They don't want to work. They just want to sit at home. And it's not that. They don't know how. We as a community need to take the time to educate them on how to communicate, how to come away from that screen, how to build a relationship, because it's not that they won't be successful. It's the fear of taking that first step into Food Lion to be a cashier. Oh my God, I got to deal with people. It's not, but then once they do it and they realize that they can, sky's the limit, you know, they'll go on to something else. But it's that initial step. There's so many that say, I can't leave my friend. I only have one good friend. But that's the friend that they've had all of this time, either through a screen or through texting, and they can be who they want to be. They don't have to actually engage. We need to take more time to be a community and give them those resources and give them those opportunities, whether it's a life skill or whatever. Because, again, something's not working or we wouldn't be here.
I think schools all over the place, as we started coming back to fully in person, I heard of multiple different areas across the Northeast that these kids aren't the same anymore. Our students aren't the same, and it's wild to me that there was a hope that they would be the exact same group of students that you had before. And I think that gets into that we've done it the same way for so long because it's worked. Well, we also miss those new opportunities. And so we actually have to look at the group of students we have in front of us and recognize their strengths and recognize those areas where they can grow so that we can deliver these skills and we can be deliberate about how we deliver those skills so that students can take those and then kind of maximize their own potential.
Yeah, and that comes back to empower. I mean, and to build the social and emotional intelligence. Empower them. They all have a skill. They just need the opportunity to figure what it is. And they're not all 4-year bound. They're not all 2-year bound. But they have a potential somewhere. And we just need to tap into it and not overlook it. Oh, they're just misbehaving. Oh, they're being defiant. No. Figure it out. Like, take 2 minutes and ask them how it, and maybe they won't share. Maybe they don't have the trust. But eventually they'll find someone. It's just, what do they say when we're having a bad smile? Make somebody's day a little brighter. For the same reason, I use Mama Duck. I don't go by Heather. They call me Mama Duck. I use it on everything. Why? Because it makes you smile. Make them smile.
It makes me think of the ducks who cross the street and they fight cars when the babies are behind. And when you get too close to them, they turn around and they just look at you, and you're like, oh.
That's kind of how I got it. I'll be honest. That's kind of we were going somewhere, and that's kind of how I got it. I was like, get in line, and it just the rest is history. So,
we all need some mama ducks. We do, and I think that if you're here listening, you're probably a mama or a papa duck somewhere. Just fighting for your students, trying to make sure that they get what they need. It is hard. It is. I keep hearing, oh, these COVID babies. These are not COVID babies. They're just babies who came during COVID. COVID is irrelevant to whatever your baby is going through. They are all digital natives. We are not. okay? They were digital natives before COVID, even more so now. We talked about having our students come back after COVID, and what were some strategies you used to get them reading because your reading scores went up? Well, I'm a rebel, so I didn't follow the curriculum. I did what I thought was necessary because I just kind of felt like, what they gonna do to me? Put me in a classroom? So, so if they needed to stop and learn how to write, then we stopped and we wrote. If I asked them, how many letters do you know? And the little boy was like, 1, and I was like, that is a number. Like, it wasn't so much that they were COVID babies, it's the fact that during COVID we were all digital and everything we were doing was screen time, and they already were doing screen time, but now that's all they want to do is screen time. And the powers that be just thought we could come back and have no screen time or all the assessments on screen time. But you have to manage your blended learning. They can't always be on the screen. You have to do stuff in person. But you don't give me the leeway to do what I have to do for them. And so I just think sometimes you have to stop and you have to be a rebel. And you don't have to be a rebel for every single student because some students get more support than others. But in that moment, if you need something, then maybe I need to figure out how to give it to you. If I can't give it to you, maybe Miss Curry down the street, down the hallway, maybe she can do it. I've seen her do it in her classroom, maybe she can do it. But for some of our students, we do have to stop and do as much as we can while still following the curriculum and staying on day 3, week 1, lesson 5, and doing that. But it's just hard because I just think people who make the rules just thought education stopped in March 2020, and then it came back in August 2022, and it was the same. And what happened to the virtual programs? Now we have no virtual programs. But the kids excelled at that, so why not keep that for the students who excelled at that? Some of the teachers excelled at teaching that way. They're not so good face-to-face, but you put everybody back face-to-face. So I just think that they really just didn't make those changes to keep up with the times. They just wanted it to be the same, and it's not. It's not.
Well, I'm going to change it for just a second because I know in my class if I'm talking and I've talked a while and I don't turn it back on the students and get them engaged, they're going to be. So I'm going to ask a question. So does anybody out here have a suggestion on, so let's focus on community. How do we create this sense of community for social and emotional well-being? Does anybody have a suggestion? I think this is the time for us to talk about this. Oh, I can repeat the question. So my question was, what are some suggestions from you guys, as far as creating this sense of community to embrace as a community, because that's what we're here for and that's what we're talking about, social and emotional learning. What is it? What is it going to take, and what are some ideas that we can share and bounce off of each other?
I think cooperative learning would work well to serve that purpose, and in an educational setting, it can be used at any grade level. With cooperative learning, you have a leader, you have helpers, and everybody has a role, and they, it's a team, they work well together and communicate, and so I just think it would touch on a lot of those things that you're all talking about that there's a need for.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back here.
So I'm a gifted and talented math teacher, and I agree a lot with. Sometimes I wonder why. So I agree with you.
This is your why.
Yes, and I agree with you with we need to bring the social and emotional lessons back into the classroom. We have to help create a community with our students. We have to get them connected together as a group and to break out of their comfort zones. The great thing that I think we need to do with not just the gifted and talented kids, although that's where most of my experience is, but all of our kids is, I think we're kind of stuck in the idea of seeing it from education as individual educators and the school, and then looking to build from there out. I think a lot of the problems that has happened with our students came from that screen time, came from the social media. And I think if we're going to make these connections and we're going to start helping them, we need to overcome their distrust, their animosity, their disconnect from education community, which we're a very big part of, and we have to do that with their parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you ask so many teachers, what's the biggest problem with education, sadly, they're going to say it's the parents.
Yeah.
And we, just as the teachers, we're going to need a society as a whole to start getting on those social media platforms and saying, we need to get together. We need to find a way to be one large nationwide community that wants to trust each other and wants to help each other and wants to grow together and wants to heal. But we're not. Our social media is trying to destroy our community.
Yeah.
It's trying to destroy our kids and build distrust. So I think we need to, I don't have a how.
Right.
I think it's going to be this massive organic sort of process nationwide of people saying, I'm going to try this little idea. I'm going to go out there and try to heal in this little way that I can and spread that out there until we start looking at each other as allies.
Yeah. It's going to be like that stone. We've got to make the ripple, and we've got to get the ripple to start somehow. So, yeah.
But it needs, I think we need to stop looking at we, the educators who are doing it. We need to make this big plea with the nation and say, hey, all of us, we got to start doing our small part. We got to work from the outside in. I don't see it working until we do.
No.
Thank you.
You spoke so eloquently up there about a young person who was able to help. You activated them by helping someone younger. So my question to you, and also that structure can get in the way of access. Structure can get in the way of connection. So as a mother, a late in life mother whose children both went through middle school, I wonder, since we're taking suggestions here, when could we go back to K through 12? When you help those middle school kids, you give them little partners that are in first grade and second grade, secret partners, little angels, there's all different names for them. But one of the things that I saw both with my grandmother, who was a one-room schoolhouse teacher in rural Oregon and Washington, to my sister and now my niece, who's a principal, we're a family of teachers, is that whoever designed middle school was a sadist. And all of the teachers are heroes and sheroes in my mind because you separate out kids in one of the most heinous times of their life. And then everybody just stares at them like they're in a petri dish. If that one structure, honestly, if we could start to, and there's schools everywhere. It takes will, but that's my suggestion.
Okay, well, that's why I'm here.
Thank
We
you.
are a one-room schoolhouse. We are 6 through 12, pretty much, and that's just it. And what we have found is you when you do something like that, you're able to find, they all have leadership potential, and you're able to see them establish that, and they don't realize it in the moment, in play, or when they're out on the field playing flag football, or when they're working on a science project, but it's there. And the younger ones, you have role models automatically built in. And so it's there. It just looks a little different. But yes, you need more water views, I'm telling you.
I think we have one.
Oh, I don't know. Okay.
Hi. So I'm coming from the lens of a parent, right? Sometimes I feel that in the education system, a lot of decisions are being made for the students without the parent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a great topic, and I encourage it, right? But there couldn't be any nurturing necessarily if the parent is not part of the plan. And I understand that there may be some time, restraints to be able to reach out to the parent, but it would be helpful to not only reach out to the parent when the child did something or misbehaved, didn't follow the rules, but hey, did you know your child had potential to do this? Did you know your child had a talent for that? And here are some resources in maybe your community, or maybe we can get together and find those resources in your community where we can continue to foster that talent.
Yeah.
So the onus is not only on the teachers, on the educational system. If we're talking about community, there cannot be community for the child if the parents are not involved.
Right. And one of the things that we have found successful is a student-led conference, and you bring the parents in twice a year and let the students, they have a plus delta for us. One thing they've done well, one thing they want to change, and we share that with the parent or guardian or whoever they may be with, because the child does have an opinion, and that's their one time when you bring their parents in, because sometimes when they're at home, they're not going to share that. But for some reason, when they're sitting with your somebody they have, whether it's a teacher or whoever that they've built trust with, they'll share those plus deltas, and that's that golden opportunity to open the door for conversations so that when they go home, they now feel like their voice has been heard and they can carry that conversation, continue it once they get beyond your four walls.
Remember the title of this book, but the relationship at home and the relationship in the education system should support the values of the parents in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point,
Mm-hmm.
twice a year, that's commendable, I understand, but maybe increasing that now, especially we are looking at social media where it's amplified, right? The children are watching what's happening in social media, they're watching television, and these imageries, they're coming at them really quickly. And in education, we have an opportunity to move just as quickly. The use of social media for reaching our students, but also reaching our parents. If we can engage more parents in the rooms more than twice a year, maybe quarterly, I understand.
We do every day.
Okay.
We use social media and collect and BCC emails. You can actually do it every day, and you can individualize it, and that's why the BCC. So,
I just want to add to that sometimes, as an educator for a lot of years, parents. Parents have had a bad relationship with education, and they bring that relationship to their child's relationship with education. And so when I started teaching at 30 with 3 children, I don't present as a 30-year-old with 3 children, and I think parents would come to the conference and they came like really, my teacher was terrible, you're going to be terrible, the school is terrible. They just really came with negative attitudes. But once you start talking to them and you say, yeah, but my daughter did that in school, and they're like, oh, you have kids, I think that part of engaging the parents is showing them that the relationship that their children are going to have are not going to be the same negative relationships that they had. And then we need parents like you to come to PTA meetings, to be the president, to be the secretary, but to engage parents from your side. Because a lot of times when we as educators try to engage parents, it doesn't have the same effect. But when they see other parents, we have social media where there's a chat, and I know one of the parents is like, I have a rising first grader at this school, and this is what I see going on. And then other parents from the same school chimed in. But if we don't have parent advocates to help us, it's hard sometimes to make that parents more engaged, and to include them is harder. And I have 2 over here.
well, I think we only have time for like one more. Yeah,
Good.
we only have like a couple minutes.
Thank you. I love this because I really highly believe this is more important than the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, as a healthcare provider and as a mom, I witness a lot of things really wrong, especially in elementary school. And I think it should be really honestly started early on, because taking these teachers and, just let them teach straightforward topics, it's detrimental to a lot of kids. And if you're not advocating for your kids, you'll miss in a good kid, honestly. I seen, as a healthcare provider, a lot of kids put in Zoloft, which is a drug for depression, at 5 years old or 6. And how do you know he's depressed? You know, as you said, and I love what you do for your school, because this is really needed more and more. And collaboration with healthcare providers and parents, it's important. But I understand some parents, they don't want to be involved and they don't want to be advocating for their kids. But I think the teacher, my opinion, my suggestion is teachers in elementary focus on that. Teachers group is very important because they carry on. These kids will go on in life to witness what happened to them in elementary, like 3rd grade. I've seen kids in 3rd grade where they're labeled as hyperactive and they're trouble, and they're not. They're not. They're very good. They're just having, you know, as you said, they're probably misunderstood, misread by the teachers. And the teacher, I'm sorry to say that, some of them, they're lazy. They don't want to invest time and energy to, and there's a lot of good teachers too. We just wouldn't want to dismiss that. It's just, I think, more of training and take these teachers and continue education maybe and teach them this stuff, because this is amazing. I think looking at the holistic approach and know what's going on in their lives. Like my son now in high school, and just an example, we had our house burned last year. He didn't tell anyone. So he was going through a lot of emotions, so I had to reach out and talk about it, and it helped. And once they understood what's going on from the other end. So I think this is amazing. We need more of this. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. And yeah, okay. We got time for one more.
And I think the speaker ahead of me I'm coming from a healthcare lens, but also a person that had the opportunity to be in Head Start and then studied kids for like 10 years trying to figure out the socio-emotional learning piece. And key to what I identified even in my study was that we have to teach those SEL skills early, 3, 4, 5, and 6, to create that strong foundation. I'm also coming from a lens of substance use, because those same skills that we should be teaching early on, or that we can teach early on, those strategies that we teach them early will also help them when they're approached by the depression, they're approached by the OCD, the anxiety. I'm calling it an approach because it is a disease that approaches the body, and we speak of the mind and the neuro. But what strategies do they have that they were able to develop in order to avoid trying to self-medicate? And so I'm coming from 2 separate lenses, but the strong piece is foundation.
And I'm going to conclude with one thought, one thinking point for you guys. So as teachers, we're taught Bloom's taxonomy, which is a triangle. And the very top is to create, and the very bottom is you're supposed to be your foundation, and we build upon it. Well, maybe we're looking the wrong way. Maybe we need to look at the top, at create, and work our way down.
Backwards mapping.
Yes. Yes. So, thank you.
Thank you, folks.